Hello friends, Tom Downey here for NFL Daily on Chat Sports. The Miami Dolphins are expected to release Ndamukong Suh, so I'm here to break down why Miami's doing this and what teams could sign Suh this offseason. We'll start with the Miami perspective, and it's partially salary cap related, partially some culture change the Dolphins want to change. With Suh, there is a $26.1 million cap hit that was going to count against the Dolphins this year. That's a massive number for any player, let alone a defensive tackle with a handful of sacks last year. If the Dolphins designate Suh a post-6-1 cut, that's June 1st, they can save $17 million. The flip side is they can't actually use that money until it's after 6-1, so the release of Suh will save the Dolphins money long-term, but it doesn't actually impact their ability to upgrade the defensive tackle spot in free agency because that money is not yet available. As for Suh, he should have plenty of interested parties once he hits the open market. Now we're going to take a look at the top 5 teams, but there are 5 teams I want to mention that don't make a ton of sense, but I think you'll see mentioned at various points. Teams like the Buffalo Bills, they were actually the 6th team out on this list. I think they do make sense. They've got the cap space if they want to bring in a player to help upgrade that defensive line. Minnesota has money as well and needed at that 3 technique spot. But I think they're saving their money for Kirk Cousins, so they just missed out. Teams like the Cowboys, well, they're connected to every major free agent, but what money do they have available to pay a guy like Suh? I don't think that makes much sense. The Jets and Redskins often throw money at big-name players, but I don't think either team is an ideal fit for Suh right now. They just missed the list. With that in mind, let's get the top 5 teams that could sign Suh this offseason. The Philadelphia Eagles lead the way at number 5. And money and the need doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but Suh reportedly said, per Sports Illustrated, he'd play for free for the Eagles. So maybe Suh takes a massive discount and the Eagles find a way to fit him on their roster with no salary cap space. If they were to get Suh, I would fully expect you to them move Timmy Jernigan because they just don't have the roster spot space at defensive tackle. Fletcher Cox is great. Jernigan is a very solid player as well. Bo Allen is a free agent, but the Eagles can't have Cox, Jernigan, and Suh unless Suh want to take the vet minimum, which I don't think you're going to see happen. I don't think the Eagles end up with Suh, but it's been discussed enough that we wanted to mention it on this show. Let's get into some more realistic candidates here. The Indianapolis Colts check in at number 4, and they certainly have the cap space to make a move for a guy like Suh, and they have the need as well. They're moving to a 4-3 defense, and you can take a look at their depth chart, and it's a lot of guys that make you go, who is this person / is he real? Jonathan Hankins is more of a run stuffer. Same with Al Woods. Hassan Ridgeway, Grover Stewart, Joey Imbu, those are not names that strike fear into opposing offenses. The Colts could take Bradley Chubb and then sign a guy like Suh, and all of a sudden, that front 7 looks pretty darn good for the Colts. So keep it on Indianapolis if Suh is looking for a little bit more money. Next up is the Oakland Raiders, and they have long needed an interior pass rusher. Yes, Khalil Mack is great. They don't have a whole lot of production outside of Mack when it comes to rushing the passer. They do have some salary cap space, $27 million. They can make a little bit more if needed. And yes, they drafted Eddie Vanderdoes last year in the 3rd round out of UCLA. He had 0 sacks. So maybe the Raiders don't want to invest fully into a guy like Eddie Vanderdoes. They had interest in Suh the last time he became a free agent, and they've shown interest in Muhammad Wilkerson. Suh might be a little bit more expensive than a guy like Mo would be, but the Raiders do make sense if Suh wants to head out west. Speaking of heading out west, I think the Seattle Seahawks make a ton of sense for Suh. They have the cap space, and they are overhauling this defense. I don't think it's a full-on rebuild. I think it's more of a reloading, restructuring in terms of that defensive scheme. Sheldon Richardson, their big defensive tackle, is a free agent. And this is an interesting group of defensive tackles for Seattle. Sheldon Richardson, they traded for. They could lose him in free agency. Jaron Reed is a nice run stuffer, and I like Nazir Jones. And in theory, you're banking on Malik McDowell to come back, but he had the bad injury before he even was able to suit up for the Seahawks. His future is very much in doubt. If Seattle wants to go out and get a guy like Suh, I think that makes sense. Oh, by the way, he's actually currently in Seattle and is originally from Portland. I think Suh in Seattle makes quite a bit of sense. Another team with ties to Suh, how about the Detroit Lions? They have the cap space, and oh, by the way, they've never properly replaced Suh. And I think it's a question of whether or not Suh wants to head back to Detroit. You've seen some other teams and former players have interest, i.e. Jimmy Graham and the Seahawks. Why not Suh and the Lions? A'Shawn Robinson, a second-round pick from a couple years ago, is a very quality run stuffer. Same with Haloti Ngata. The Lions do not have a disruptive defensive tackle on that interior of the defensive line. It's not a King Spence or Jeremiah Ledbetter or Jordan Hill. If Ngata retires or comes back either way, I think the Lions do need an actual disruptive 3 technique, and Suh would most certainly fit that bill, assuming those bridges have not been burned when Suh left Detroit. So to recap, here are the top 5 landing spots for Suh: the Detroit Lions, Oakland Raiders, Seattle Seahawks, Colts, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Once again, folks, I'm Tom Downey. Follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney for more NFL coverage. We'll have more of these videos as players are cut and traded and signed and so on. So subscribe to the channel to be notified once we have these new videos out there. Until then, we'll see you next time.